Excuse me. Pardon me.
Hey, sit down.
You know, I don't know if I'd say Superman has lost his soul. I think in Man of Steel there is some core of Superman, but he's definitely been hobbled. This is, not the usual Superman I enjoy, because he's this dour, sad, just unfortunate character with self-confidence issues. They've reduced him down to a series of superpowers, a power set, and a series of abilities, as opposed to treating him like a character, like you would a character in any other work of fiction. Which I think is an unfortunate thing, and I think that's how a lot of people engage Superman, and why some people think he's boring. They think of him more as a collection of superpowers and less as an actual character who should be hopeful, who should be aspirational, a character who embodies the best that humans can be, the best of his old culture, his inherited one. I mean, there's an entire subtext about the immigrant narrative in Superman that's very fascinating. The character, I think, who lost his soul in the movie, though, is actually Jonathan Kent. And I think if people talk about Superman losing his soul in this movie, I think it's because his father on Earth has no soul. I mean, let's contrast what Thomas Wayne tells Bruce Wayne in Batman Begins versus what Jonathan Kent tells Clark Kent in Man of Steel. Thomas Wayne tells Bruce Wayne, why do we fall down so we can get back up again? Saying, we're going to fail, but we're going to get better, we're going to do things better, we're going to learn from our mistakes. Jonathan Kent says to Clark Kent after he saves that bus full of his classmates, you should stay hidden. You should not use your powers for good right now, because now's not the time, and you probably should let your classmates drown. And that doesn't strike me as a particularly a good lesson for a character to learn. And I think that's probably why Superman seems to have lost his soul, because he's struggling with poor lessons from his parents.
I think it's important to consider what has happened with films like this recently. Everything is going dark, everything is becoming gritty and realistic and whatever. And a figure like Superman is going to get hit the hardest, because of the superheroes, Superman is really sort of the least real. He's perfect, Mr. Everything is totally cool. And in order to bring him to, a modern audience, you need to make him dark, you need to make him confused. It's just where that sort of character has to go, even if it runs against decades and decades of canon. We're in a different world now than the one the Donner films, or even Superman Returns. It's just we're in a different place, and sort of the vibrancy and the soul kind of died with that. But I don't really think that that's a problem necessarily. I mean, I just think that this is where the character has to be today, to fit in with the times, to fit in with sort of the trend of more and more realistic characters. I think the final moments of the film, in fact, I think are some of the worst in the entire thing, because that's when it goes from that dark, brooding whatever, to something verging on campy, and I don't think it works. I think keeping that grit and that almost realism is the best thing the character can do, and it'll be interesting to see where it goes in the sequel.
If you read my review on the site, you know that I dug Superman, but I didn't feel like it was Superman. I felt like it was missing the soul, basically. You got Henry Cavill, who looked great as Superman, acted great as Superman, but there was no real character development there. And I'm not sure how to explain it, because they do a lot of the father-son building thing with Zod and Pa Kent, but it never built to a Superman who progressed anywhere. You saw Clark Kent in the beginning, but it wasn't the Clark Kent we know, who's a dichotomy to Superman. It was this beefed up, working in Alaska Clark Kent, and he was basically Superman, just not in a costume. So the character never really went anywhere from beginning to end of the movie. And then you had admittedly amazing fight sequences that never really advanced him anywhere until the very end, when he has to make a really tough decision. But throughout it all, you never got a feeling that this is Superman, this is who he is and what he's going to do. It felt really flat to me in that sense. The action was amazing, performances I was great with, but it didn't feel like Superman was there, like Superman had showed up yet. Hopefully in the sequel we'll get a bit more, but until then, all we really get is Henry Cavill saying a few lines in a costume.
There's one point in Man of Steel where Zod says, "You're killing my soul," and at that point I was like, "Yep, you're killing my too." Man of Steel is basically a good-looking version of Thor. You know, you get the capes, you get the punching in your air as you fly, and there's one scene where he's fighting in a small town, the same setup, small town, single street, where he looks at a giant guy and all the buildings, and there's one point where they fly through an IHOP, and apparently, you know, IHOP paid money for this sponsorship, but it doesn't bother with having people actually eat there. It's pretty hilarious. You're like, okay, you know, IHOP is a pretty big name here, but no one wants to eat at IHOP. I was kind of hoping, you know, as they were flying through the window, there'd be that one guy eating the pancake, and then, you know, the little piece falls out as he's surprised as Superman comes flying through the window. And then, you know, there's a Sears that he crashes into, and in case you forgot, there's like signage and a little basket turned over. And then in front of a 7-Eleven, the 7-Eleven blows up. And through the whole movie, you're getting the feeling that it's setting up for a sequel that, you know, got confirmed. But, you know, you're like, why? Why waste your time here? Stop with all the setup and create a movie that can stand on its own. And it really doesn't. It looks good. It sounds good. It's a good Thor 2. But it's no Superman.